I'm just going to put it out there, a massive caveat, I do not have the answers, but hopefully if there's something you can take from my experience and incorporate into your own lives, then I'd say like the night's been worthwhile. Personally, that's pretty much my whole life. I've looked to older people or people I've been inspired by to see what they do and maybe take a little piece of their lives and incorporate it into my own. Because I think we don't know everything. We can always learn something. And you never know when you're going to pick up the smallest little tidbit from someone's life experience. Just even listening to Josh talk about his own, how he incorporates it. I think we're all different, but if we can take one small facet and incorporate it into our own lives, then I think that's what makes us bigger people. So. Initially wasn't going to talk about me breaking my neck, but everyone likes to hear about the time I broke my neck. I think I should go back and say, yes, initially I did the pretty much orthodox. I went through high school, went to university, and I got a marketing job at Hewlett-Packard, and my parents were stoked. They thought, oh, he's made it, he's going to have a great career, because my dad worked in the bank his whole life. And I lasted about 6 months there, and I quit. And I said, sorry, I'm going overseas travelling. And I vividly remember this. It was a massive argument I had with my father. And I probably said, fuck you. And I remember I vented, I jumped on my bike and I rode up Plenty Road and I was just in the big grid and I was so angry because I was so determined to basically do whatever made me happy. And much to my dad's dismay, my brother and I pretty much those kind of people who we keep ourselves busy, we're self-motivated, I don't know where we get it from, but ultimately we want to do things that entertain us, I suppose, ultimately. So in terms of work-life balance, I'm fortunate, you could say that I actually love what I do, but it's taken 10 years to get to that time. Like FYXO was always a side hustle when I was a bike courier, and it was only from travelling the world as a bike courier and meeting other people who were doing all these awesome things that inspired me to do likewise events and things when I came back to Melbourne. And I use one example. I was in London, that's where I started working as a bike courier, not here in Melbourne. And we're at the pub at the end of the Friday and my mate says to me, I just got back from New York. I did this race at night. It was awesome. It's like 700 people were racing through New York. And we got to a checkpoint and you had to get a tattoo. I'm like, bullshit. He's like, no, look. And sure enough, he had it looked like a bike, but it was NYC on his forearm. I'm like, holy shit, that is cool. And that ride, you can Google, it's called the Warriors Ride, based on the Warriors movie, was probably like the biggest night messenger race called an Alley Cat ever in New York. And I was fortunate enough to become friends with the guy who organised it. And I remember one day I said to him, do you know what? I'm going to start an event like that in Melbourne. It's going to be fucking bigger than yours. Because back then, I was kind of competitive, but still kind of am, depends on what context. But when I came back to Melbourne, I was really inspired by meeting all of these people who are doing awesome things in their lives in their home city. And I was frustrated that people were saying, oh, I'd love to go to New York. It must be awesome there. I'd love to go to San Francisco or London. And I'd worked in all these places and I thought, you know what? Melbourne's way better. What are you talking about? So that was really the impetus for me to start putting on community events for people. And from that, it's spawned. And people talk about Melbourne, it's the cycling capital of Australia, and there's so much going on here. It's because I suppose people like myself have just got off their bums and said, you know what, let's just start it here. And I think that's one of the special things about Melbourne. I don't know what it is. It does help that it's kind of flat. There's a fantastic bicycle network of cycleways. There's Beach Road. As much as I make fun of Beach Road, it's a fantastic place if you're time poor or you just want to get out to go up and down. There's things that have started like spin room and indoor communities where people can get together primarily. I think people underplay how much people are attracted to being part of something bigger than themselves. So as well as, obviously there's performance benefits of training, but I think ultimately we all want to interact with other humans and have an experience beyond in our everyday to make that day memorable. And I think spin room's a great example of something that's perhaps it's 1 day or 2 days of the week you look forward to because so-and-so is going to be there, you can push someone else. And I think that's one of the great things about Melbourne is there's so many little subsets of groups of people that get together to just kind of inspire each other or just to hang out and to talk. And I think myself, there's a ride every Sunday at retarded o'clock because in terms of work-life balance, I've found that if I want to ride during the day, I can't really go for 3 hours and not be grilled by my partner, and rightly so. So it's not uncommon for me to wake at 4:30 or 5, actually 6 is kind of like sleeping, and get up and do stuff in the early hours of the morning because if I don't do that, it just doesn't happen. And my brother, he's been doing this for forever. And initially I thought, you're crazy, 4:30? But he's actually quite, mild genius because there's no one out there on the road, particularly if you're riding on the road. I don't ride on the road so much now myself, but there's very little traffic. So it's a great time, there's very little noise, it's super peaceful. And for me, starting the day, it doesn't matter if it's freezing cold, and getting to see the sun come up every day. At the end of the day, whether things have gone to pot or things have gone well, at least I've had a really nice way to start the day. And in terms of my own family, at the end of the day, we ask each other what was the best part of your day. And there's a few benefits, and this is not my genius, this is my wife. It's something that she did. It's a good time to just sit down and communicate with your loved ones because we are busy. Like everyone talks about how busy they are, but it forces us to stop, to listen to someone else, and we can either empathize or we can congratulate them. And it's just a way of sharing the experience of the day. And sometimes for all of us, it'll be the same highlight. Sometimes it'll be something different. And in terms of work-life balance, I suppose I should go back to when I was pretending that I was going to be pro. And it's interesting talking to Josh, talking about training and getting faster and competitive. There was a time in my life where I was super serious about racing and training. And I was doing all of this training and racing and neglecting my wife, neglecting my work. And it wasn't what led to my broken neck, but my broken neck was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Well, one of a few things. One, it just forced me to realize what's important because I think, and appreciate the privilege it is to have full able-bodied. There's so many people not so fortunate, and I was thrust into that world to meet people who have had that taken away from them. So that was a real jarring shock. But also, I was spending all this time away from my wife just to ride my bike for the sake of basically chest beating, and it was to the detriment of our relationship. And if I didn't work on it, I tell you now, I wouldn't be married now, wouldn't be a father now, and those two things are easily the coolest things that I've done. I've done a lot of cool bike things, which riding far or doing wild things on a bike, but I didn't know until I became a dad that it is the coolest thing ever. I think all us dads can relate to it, and it is also one of the most challenging things ever. Because children frustrate the hell out of us, they don't listen, but the joys, obviously, of being a father outweigh everything. And going back to what I started with, taking a piece from and I encourage everyone to do it tonight, to talk to people, to find out about their backgrounds, what they do, because finding pieces of that and incorporating what I see as great fathers and father figures and fathers that spend a lot of time with their kids or have great kids, I look to them as role models and go, you know what, I'm going to do that. that guy or that mum, they've kind of worked it out, because any parent will tell you there's no, there's no boot camp that can prepare you for it. So I've found the best way is just to take little pieces from other parents and go, I like that. And sometimes I might sound like parenting is hard work, but I've found that I drag my daughter along to do basically what I want to do, which is playing in the dirt, which is going to the park, doing all the things that I did as a kid, and getting to relive that through her is the best thing ever. The last 5 years have just been awesome, and I look forward to that continuing, because it's the joy, like that. It's so cliche to talk about the small joy of being a parent, but it absolutely is. And in terms of work-life balance, for me, it's obviously I could go out training, and I think about when I wasn't a father, I'd go on week-long rides. Actually, one of them I called the greatest Victorian bike ride, because it was longer and it was harder, and I did like 250k a day, and I slept in pubs, and I rode around all around Victoria. You can't reasonably do these kind of things when you're a dad and want to stay married and be a good dad. But I'm glad that I did that before that, because I can look back fondly, and hopefully I can tell my daughter that, when you get older, you can do the Great Big Bike Ride, or you can do other events, or you can do running and things like this. Encourage her and get her mates along. And, I think it's important to instill in this new generation, particularly women, they can do anything the boys can do, and they look better doing it. And I think we've got a great example in the back of the room. She's cooking. She's hiding now. But Sarah is obviously an accomplished cyclist. And I remember meeting Sarah before Spin Room, and watching her journey has been amazing. And I think it's testament to the fact that in her sporting chosen profession, gender really, it's a level playing field. And mental strength is probably where people come into their own. And I think Jesse's another example of having mental strength. And getting older, they talk about dad strength. As they went down again, obviously the foreground just jammed on my tyre and just threw me straight into the ground, and I smashed my head very, very hard. And I remember the first thing I was lying on my back thinking, can I wiggle my toes? Okay, I can wiggle my toes, I haven't broken my neck. First stupid thing I did. So then I walked a kilometre back to the main road. Second thing, stupid thing I did, they're like, trying to move my neck. And I could not physically move my neck. It was that fixed. I couldn't call my dad. There was no reception. Couldn't call an ambulance. Some cyclists actually came past and they said, do you need help? I said, no, I'll be right. Actually, when you get to the bottom of the hill, just call my dad. So an hour later, I was just shivering. My dad came. My parents are arguing in the car, like, which hospital do we take him to? I said, no, just take me home. I'm going to have a bath. I'll be fine. So got home, had a bath, and I remember speaking to my wife, and I said, do you think I should go to the hospital or the doctor? And she's like, yeah, I think you should go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor. The doctor didn't have a neck brace. Oh, maybe you should get an x-ray. Went for an x-ray. You've broken your neck. You probably should go to hospital for just an observation. I'm like, all right, whatever, far out, this is annoying. So I get to the hospital and I show them my exam, and they're like, and I remember the girl in triage said, holy shit, this guy fucking walked in here. And she literally reached across the counter and she grabbed my neck, and I said, is this serious? She goes, this is really serious. And look, from there on, that was it. And if I encourage people that if you do fall off your bike, never assume, like this, and I say this, the smallest injury, you never know once the adrenaline wears off, or particularly if a car's involved, once the driver's left the scene, you might find you injured post-accident. Always be overcautious. Don't be like me and think, oh no, she'll be right, because I was really lucky. If I didn't go to hospital, the potential for lifelong injury for myself was huge. So yeah, I was just very stupid initially for buying cheap wheels and not buying curved wheels. And I think the lesson I learned is always listen to your wife. So yeah, that's how I broke my neck.